Hello, everyone. Brother Al McLean with this week's stewardship video. This video is a follow-up to the 4Ds of debt. So this is 4Ds of debt part two. The first one was last week, December 2nd. So I'll do a quick review, but make sure you look at the video from last week. So this one will be the continuation. But as we always do, before we go too far into the topic, no advice should be seen as a recommendation or endorsement, as I am not a licensed financial advisor, and this is for educational purposes only. Please do your own research. So just a quick review from last week. I did it using the analogy of my car, my keys. You can see the radio was on, and I was about to take off in the car when the next picture is what it looked like. That is a wheel lock. And I did the 4Ds of debt related to this wheel lock. That debt is deceitful because with my wheel lock, I was oblivious and wasn't paying attention that it was on the steering wheel. Therefore, this has become like my default, just to look at the keys and not even paying attention, which is how debt often is. And because I actually started it, it would have affected my direction because could only go like forward and backwards, couldn't turn. And eventually with that wheel lock on, it would have been destruction. And these were the Bible verses that went with it. So I'm not going to go through those, but make sure you look at part one, and you can freeze it and look at part two, the videos related to deceit, default direction. And then there was another one that was on destruction. And all of these, if your debt is out of control, this is eventually it'll affect your direction of your life, as well as it'll end up in destruction financially. So I also use this slide from Tom Copeland's course that I'm taking, and I pointed out the facilitator and how we are going through the section that we had just done was on debt, and there was a contrast between being Mr. Unwise from a biblical standpoint versus Mr. Wise in biblical concept. And a couple of them I highlighted last week, but I'll just look at some this week in highlighting that an unwise person generally never saves, just borrows and buys, versus wise is in the habit of saving for future needs. You go to number two, makes financial decisions based upon personal desires or gut feeling, not needs. The wise person generally buys only what he needs. And not saying you can't have luxury items, but if it means going into debt for that luxury item, then, or extreme debt into that luxury item, then that's being unwise. Here's an example. You may need transportation, and that transportation could be a bus pass, or it could be a very modest car and versus a luxury car. So there's a want and desire for a luxury car, but the need is for transportation. Here's number five, buys home with very little down. Contrast that to the wise person saves an significant amount down payment for a home and pays down the mortgage as soon as possible. That's ASAP. Seven, the unwise person has no budget. The wise person lives within a budget. And then finally, eight, the unwise person generally runs a balance on their credit cards versus a wise person uses a credit card carefully, if any, and pays it off each month and therefore incurs no interest charges. So just went into this more detail versus last week. I just kind of introduced it. And what I wanted to also do by going into more detail with the Mr. Unwise versus Wise is also talk about debt snowball. This is a method of paying it off. Now, this is only about a 2-minute video, and it's Rachel Cruz, which is Dave Ramsey's daughter. If you're more interested, go out to this RamseySolutions.com. You can scroll down to the section on debt, and it'll give you the complete details of the debt snowball, which she's going to describe very briefly in this YouTube video.
Now, a lot of people think that debt is not bad. Like, it's just a normal way of thinking. That's what society tells us. And in fact, 80% of Americans are living with some form of consumer debt right now. Listen, you cannot create a life you love while you're in debt. When you are in debt, it forces you to live life looking through the rearview mirror because you are chained to stuff in the past. So, how do you get rid of debt? Well, it all starts with the debt snowball. Okay, this is the best way, the most effective way to get out of debt. And this is the debt snowball, where you list out all of your debts, smallest amount to largest amount, regardless of the interest rate. Pay minimum payments on everything and pay off the smallest debt first. Then once that's paid off, you roll all the payments, all the money you're throwing at the smallest debt to the second smallest debt. Then once that's paid off, you have the minimum payments of the smallest debt and the second smallest debt to roll over to the third smallest debt. So it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Your money continues to expand to start knocking down each debt. And I love this because what this takes is motivation, okay? And once you pay off that smallest debt, motivation comes. Your behavior starts to change. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Rachel, shouldn't you pay off the highest interest rate first? Yes, technically that would be mathematically correct. And that method is what they call the debt avalanche, which is terrible, by the way. I mean, like, avalanche or snowball? Okay, snowballs are way more fun. I don't want to be caught in an avalanche. No. So stick with the debt snowball. But again, mathematically speaking, yes, the debt avalanche could save you a few $100, mathematically speaking. But when studies have been done of people who do the debt snowball versus the debt avalanche, they actually get out of debt faster using the debt snowball. Again, because it's all about your motivation. It's all about your behavior change. Now, the debt snowball, it has worked for millions and millions of people, and I promise it can work for you.
So a couple of things I mentioned. If you want more details, by all means, go out. Subscribe to the Rachel Cruz Show. That's out on YouTube. You can watch an entire episode on the debt snowball, and also, RamseySolutions.com. That's an excellent reference that you could also utilize. With that, let's go ahead and change gears. Look a little bit at the market and what's reporting this week. This is the week of December 11th, and we are just a couple of weeks away from 2024. And we're coming to the end of an earnings season, and then we'll go into January. That'll be a huge earnings season because they'll be closing out not only fourth quarter, but year to date. Well, this week we've got reporting Oracle, which is a big technology reporting. Adobe, same thing, big technology reporting. But then we have Thursday, which is Lennar Homes. And then Costco, which would be from consumer standpoint, and then Darden restaurants. So probably won't, the Adobe and the Oracle probably will affect QQQ. The others, probably not as much. A lot of people will be looking at Lennar Homes when it comes to a preview of what's going on with the housing market. And then I think we've got some other like economic reports that are going on this week. So we talked about debt and from a defensive standpoint of using debt snowball, but here's something that from an offensive standpoint I had promised related to debt. So we know people consume. So as a investor, maybe you want to look at investing in places where people run up debt and where people use their credit cards. So you could do consumer staples, which also are a good play for when people are starting to cut back on their credit card spending and cut back on things as recessions may start to occur next year. People still need to spend on consumer staples. So here's exchange traded funds that you can do. And you can use etfdb.com to look what's within those exchange traded funds and maybe look at those companies like Procter & Gamble, Costco, Pepsi, Walmart. These are also places like Target, Walmart, that Costco, where people spend using their credit cards, but it's also a place that these companies tend to hold up when people start to cut back on their debt because these are staples. Now, you can also do the obvious as you pay down your debt. I always thought it was one of the things I did was, let me invest in these companies that like Visa, MasterCard, American Express. People, I don't have credit cards anymore, but I would look, profit from people who can continue to spend on those credit cards. Again, these are not recommendations. Do your own research. This is just sparking ideas. So let's close out as we always do. Let's look at the overall market, QQQ. That's a year-to-date high. And remember, QQQ is focused on technology companies. $392.17. That's a high for the year. SPY, same thing. That's a high for the year. $460.20. That completes this week's stewardship video. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Now going into the holiday season, we gave a precaution. Let's not go out and overextend ourselves spending, and definitely not, if you have credit card debt, let's not add to it. And if you don't, let's pay for things cash and come out of December with nothing but fond memories and not credit card debt. And as Rachel Cruz said, it's looking in the past. And we know what the Lord's talked about, looking in the past, you need to be looking toward the future. It affects your future if you have credit card debt, because you're paying for things, as Richard Cruz said in that video, from things in your past. So let's just go into with the promise to ourselves. We're not going to add to our credit card debt. And if we don't have any debt, we're not going to go in debt for Christmas. So as always, as my pastor Denny Dwight Davis, who just had his Shepherd's Day, we celebrated with him. He always says, have a good week and remember to keep a good spirit. And as we say in the stewardship video, remember, Jesus is Lord. Therefore, he is the owner. He's our Lord and Savior, but he's the owner. But we are his faithful stewards following his principles. And this week, let's focus on the one. Let's not get into debt. I'll see you next week.